This weekend, one of the college football coaches that was not retained was Missouri's Barry Odom. He had been there for 4 years, 25-25 record, 0-2 in a bowl game. Here's a guy that I never understood the hire, and I'm not a big fan of colleges hiring interim coaches, especially those who don't have, I don't want to say the merit, but don't really have this strong connection. It's not like that. Barry Odom had all, he's a Missouri alum in the late 90s, played linebacker for them. He was an assistant with them from 2003 to 2011, worked his way up from the recruiting GA to the recruiting side, football ops. He was their safety. He went to Memphis for 3 years under Justin Fuente, and then came back to Missouri in 2015. And he took over for Gary Pinkel, and I think a big part of that was that Pinkel had so much success at Missouri, and Odom kind of came in, having some success at Memphis, and so they just wanted to keep it going. And so I'm never a big fan of that. It seems like when you just go with an internal guy because someone stepped down, it never goes well. We saw that in Mississippi with Matt Luke, and it happened with Missouri here. Missouri went in his 4 years. He went 8-4, 7-6, 8-5, and 6-6. And he had that 8-5 year with Drew Lock as his quarterback. So he's never able to, even though he had some good talent, to fully get this program going. Now, Missouri, and another big thing about Missouri is he beat the teams he was supposed to beat and could never beat the top 10 programs. His record against the bottom SEC programs was 11-10. That's the bottom. That's the South Carolinas, the Kentuckys, the Tennessees, the Vanderbilts, the Ole Misses, the Arkansas. He was 11-10 against them. His record against the top SEC programs was 2-9. 2 wins against Florida, but he couldn't beat Georgia. He couldn't beat Alabama. He couldn't beat LSU. Couldn't beat Auburn. He was horrible against the top teams and was average against the good teams. So I know some people, seemed like a no-brainer for me. Now, let's look at Missouri as a program. They've had some good success in the SEC. Here's a team that came from the Big 12, had some good success there, but it was never great. Come into the SEC, I know a lot of people, myself included, thought they would just be continuously one of the bottom teams in the conference. And instead, they had a lot of early success with Gary Pinkel. They won the SEC East twice. And so there's potential there. The SEC East is still wide open behind Georgia. Florida is Florida's good this year. They seem to be in the top 15. But I think they clean up on the SEC East and have favorable matchups against the SEC West. So I still think there's room in there, definitely for that third spot, potentially for that second spot. I mean, we've seen Missouri do it in the past. They've got good, close ties to some recruiting. Kansas City and St. Louis in Missouri have produced some talent. We've seen guys like Dorial Green-Beckham come out of Missouri also. Chicago's not too far away. Memphis isn't too far away. Texas isn't too far away. So you've got a nice radius of states around them, including their own, that have produced some top-flight talent. So this is an intriguing position, not only because of that, but because you are in the SEC East. You don't have to deal with Alabama, Auburn, LSU, Texas A&M on a regular basis. You have Florida and Georgia. And I think Florida is a team who, as we speak right now, that is primed for the picking. So I think this is going to be a job that is going to be attractive to a lot of teams. Their athletic director, Jim Sturk, comes from San Diego State. Before that, he was at Washington State. Before that, he was at Portland State. He's likes established head coaches, and the rumor is that they're looking towards an offensive mind. So who could that be? Who could be those candidates that they go for to fill this position left by Barry Odom? I think the guy that you think of off the top of the list is Mike Norvell. Mike Norvell is being mentioned at almost every single current opening that's out there. Florida State, Arkansas, Ole Miss, now Missouri. And I think Missouri, Ole Miss, and Arkansas are kind of in the same boat. They all have their advantages, all have their disadvantages. I think Missouri might be the most attractive out of those three. Yes, Ole Miss has had some high-level success lately, but once again, Arkansas and Ole Miss are in the SEC West. Missouri is in the East. That is definitely beneficial towards them. You know, Norvell could go to Missouri, be tied to that local success, those talent, and still be able to go on and have that success. Now, if they don't get Mike Norvell, you know, other guys that have been brought up before, Willie Fritz at Tulane, this guy's had success everywhere he's gone. Tulane, Sam Houston State, Georgia Southern. What about Brian Harsin? Brian Harsin had coached at Arkansas State. He had been at Texas. He's familiar with that area. You know, is he the latest Boise State coach to go on? Is he more Chris Peterson, a guy that can go on from Boise and have success? Or is he another Dan Hawkins or Dirk Cutter, so on and so forth? But he'd definitely be someone, he's shown that he can have a lot of success out there. Billy Napier, he's having a great year at Louisiana Lafayette. You know, he coached at Alabama. He's coached at Clemson. He's been an offensive coordinator at Arizona State. Now he's calling the plays and being the head coach at Louisiana Lafayette. They've got a 10-2 season. He's a rising star. What about Lane Kiffin? Lane Kiffin's a guy that, you know, tremendous offensive mind, but is he ready to take over an SEC program now? Now that he's had time to, you know, grow as a head coach under Nick Saban, or as an assistant coach under Nick Saban, now a head coach at Florida Atlantic, he's pushed them to a Conference USA championship game. Arkansas is looking at Lane Kiffin. Could he look at going back to the SEC West or East and with Missouri? You know, they had success with Gary Pinkel, a spread, offensive-minded guy. Kiffin fits a lot of that mold. I think Mike Leach would be a fantastic hire for Missouri. I think that would be a complete home run. Mike Leach almost took the Tennessee job last year. He actually agreed to it before they fired their head coach or their athletic director. Could this be the job that gets Mike Leach out of Washington State? You know, they had a bad year this year after a good one the year before. You know, the SEC East, you know, he already almost accepted a job in the SEC East last year. I think his wide open spread. You know, Mike Leach has coached in the SEC. If you didn't know that, he had been the offensive coordinator at Kentucky under Hal Mumme. Would he want to get back into that SEC? Eli Drinkwater is another guy that's constantly mentioned there. Appalachian State's head coach, had a lot of success at NC State as their offensive coordinator, another Boise guy. I'm not sure that I could see him leaving Appalachian State for Missouri, and especially after just being the head coach there, but something to kind of keep an eye on. What about Will Healy? He's Charlotte's head coach. There's some talk that, you know, he's 34 years old, highly energetic. Could he be the next PJ Fleck? And not, you know, PJ Fleck is a guy all to himself, so it's hard to really kind of compare him to somebody else. But if we think of this as the young, up-and-coming coach, the good recruiter, look at what Healy's done at Charlotte, building that program up. Could Missouri say, hey, we see a lot of this next young, hot coach coming up. Let's pluck him before someone else does. If we go the assistant route, once again, you got to talk to Clemson coaches. Tony Elliott, Jeff Scott. At some point, you think they're going to become head coaches out there. Is Missouri a job that they want to go to? Do they want to, you know, the both of them have kind of only coached in that southeast area. Is going over to Missouri with not a whole lot of ties a job that they want to pursue? I think that's something that we're going to learn over the next month or so. A couple other assistants. Josh Heupel is currently Central Florida's head coach. He was the offensive coordinator here under Barry Odam when Odom first took the job. Kind of had some mild success and then went down to Central Florida. Would they be able to pull him back up here? Matt Eberflus is one of the hot NFL coaching candidates. The Indianapolis Colts defensive coordinator. What he's done with that Colts defense is tremendous. But he's going to be looking at NFL jobs. If teams maybe pass on him because he's a defensive coach and not an offensive mind, everyone wants offensive minds, would he take the Missouri job? I mean, that's a lot of hypothetical. And Indianapolis is pushing for a playoff spot. Missouri's going to want to fill this job as soon as they can. So he's definitely someone to keep an eye on. I just don't really see it as a possibility. And lastly, Alex Grinch is Oklahoma's defensive coordinator. Before coming to Oklahoma, and their defense played a lot better at the beginning of the year. They've kind of struggled since. Before that, he was at Ohio State. Before that, he had done pretty good at Washington State. He's always kind of been with these high-powered offenses. He's Gary Pinkel's nephew. So you got to think Gary Pinkel has some pull in this. And if Gary really thinks that Alex Grinch is qualified and should get this job, and Grinch wants it, you got to think that would benefit him to have Pinkel in his corner. But if they're leaning towards offense, that's going to be a negative for Alex Grinch. Like I said, I think Norvell is the top candidate, the top guy that they're going to be going after. I'm not too sure that they'll get him just because he's going to get a job somewhere. Maybe this is it because it's maybe a little bit more attractive than the other two ACC schools, and especially if he doesn't get that Florida State job. I'm not ruling out Lane Kiffin here. It makes a lot of sense, but my dark horse is Mike Leach.